From Boss Track, it's Her HypeSquad, a show about amazing women who've made incredible strides as leaders in their industry. They're here to support you in your leadership growth, to encourage you and hype you up as part of your Hype Squad. Hi everyone, it's Michelle Harris back with another episode of Her Hype Squad. This week we have a special guest to talk with about owning your voice and leading with authenticity, creativity, and courage. Today I'm talking with Lauri Smith, Chief Visionary Officer of Voice Matters and author of Your Voice Matters, a guide to speaking soulfully when it counts. In our conversation, we talk about owning your voice, dealing with inner criticism, transforming nervous energy into a compelling presence, simplifying complex concepts, and so much more as it relates to communication. I'm excited to share this episode, but before we get into the conversation, I want to share a little bit about Lauri's background. Lauri Smith is a speaker, author, and intuitive public speaking and leadership coach. She helps sensitive visionaries, ambitious empaths, and loving rebels to speak online and in person and be seen in order to fulfill their soul's calling. Lauri is the Chief Visionary Officer of Voice Matters and the author of Your Voice Matters, a guide to speaking soulfully when it counts. Her mission is to call forth more open-hearted leaders so they can do their part to change the world with authenticity, creativity, and courage. She envisions a world in which everyone shares the vibration of their soul's purpose through their voices, and together we reach a global harmony. Lauri can always see the soul underneath the static, which makes her really good at motivating people to fight their inner demons and find tremendous inner power. If you enjoy my conversation with Lauri, be sure to subscribe to our channel and help more people find us by sharing this episode with others or by leaving a review. Or subscribe to our weekly newsletter filled with things we found that we're excited about and we're inspired by, along with valuable leadership advice to watch, listen to, or read. It's a little bit of joy for your inbox each Monday. You can subscribe at www.thebosstrack.com/weeklyjoy. Now let's get to my conversation with Lauri Smith. Hi, Lauri. It's so nice to have you here on Her Hype Squad with Boss Track. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Michelle. It's great to be here.
Well, I'd love for you to share with the audience a little bit about yourself, and we'll get into our discussion. I know we have a lot to talk about. I'm really excited about our conversation.
Thank you. I'm Lauri Smith. I'm an actor, a speaker, and an intuitive public speaking and leadership coach. And I really was drawn to that intuitively to help get some of the voices that are here to usher in the change in the world that we desperately need to step out from the shadows and feel comfortable and vibrant and alive and authentic when they speak on stages or videos, wherever they're being called to use their voice.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's so important for our audience, they're going to be getting up in front of management team in meetings. They might be in a big group setting. They might be in front of their team. And there are so many times they're going to be up in front of people basically on stage at their company. And so I think this is so important. And I know a lot of conversations that I've had with some of our community and some of my guests in the past is just the hesitance, especially as a new leader, to know when to speak up and when it's okay to use your voice. And I know we're talking about owning your voice. And so it might be a great place to get started to have you explain what does it mean to own your voice, and especially in the terms of our audience of women leaders.
Well, the first part of own your voice is what part of you is it that's owning it? And when I say own your voice, what I like to help people with is that it's their soul's voice, not their inner critic or their ego that's kind of doing the owning. And for women leaders, for any human, and for women leaders, we really get derailed when the inner critic, I call them the soul suckers, are shoulding all over us, as my coach used to say. You should do this, you should do that. Should I speak up in this meeting? Should I hold back? What should I say? When should I say it? That it kind of creates static and dissonance and makes it harder for us to access our confidence. If we take the time to set an intention for what we want to bring into a meeting or to a presentation, like what do I want to create in the room with my presence, then particularly in those dynamic meetings, or how it shows up in those dynamic meetings, is the decision points are easier. I set the intention. Does speaking now serve that intention? Yes or no? And it makes it easier to jump in and to know when we really want to jump in from that owning our voice place.
Yeah. Would you maybe be able to provide an example of if somebody is getting ready to go into a meeting and what that intention might look like?
Yeah, I will give an example that includes both a public speaking half of the meeting she was presenting, and yet the part that she was most concerned about was the conversation that was going to happen afterwards. It was, as I was writing my book years ago, I was working with this client. She was a CFO, and she mentioned that whenever she would present to the board of this foundation, money stuff would come up, which is funny because we think all these people that have money have no money stuff. And she was like, it's a family board, primarily family members. And, you know, what happens after I present every time is like Thanksgiving, your worst Thanksgiving movie nightmare with money stuff layered into it. So she was presenting from a place of her inner critic, trying to protect her from having that cat fight break out in the room. She had also told me a story when I said, hey, you know, I used to be an actor, or I am an actor, and now I'm a public speaking coach too. She told me this story about being an accountant years earlier, where actors would come into the room with their boxes of receipts and just dump them on her desk in tears. Because actors, by and large, are not very good with money. You know, they have a creative skill that's more on the right hemisphere than the left hemisphere. And they're essentially running their own business that's very personal to them, but they are not seeing it that way, particularly when it comes to tax time. So she told me this story about how she used to help all these actors. And then she's talking about this potential cat fight and all the landmines she's trying to avoid. And I paused her and I said, what if you shifted that and your intention was to be the bridge that demystifies money for them? And she did that for the presentation. So the first thing that happened was she was grounded and present, and her presentation was clear and vibrant and alive. And when she came back and spoke about it after the meeting, she said there was a little bit of something in the room. And by and large, with that intention, the cat fight never really rose to a cat fight. And I believe it came from her presence being different. When you're holding a room and you've got something like avoid the money landmines versus demystify the finances for them. She said it was the best meeting they had ever had.
Yeah.
That's an example that crosses both the presentation part and the more dynamic boardroom conversation half.
Right. Do you know, or maybe there's some guidance you gave her, is it more like half an hour before the meeting, you have this intentional thought and you prepare your mind for it? Is there like a process there, or how do you guide that?
Yeah, there's two parts. If I'm working with them, we're going to work that into how the presentation itself is organized. So if you are going to demystify money for them and you set the emotional intention. What's the emotion or the energy you hope to create in the room? That influences how you design the slide order.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if I'm creating a movie, what's the emotional experience that I want to create? I'm going to put the scenes in a different order in order to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Then I would also ask people to take some time. And this is oftentimes we help design, like, what's your warm-up ritual for you in each circumstance? Sometimes it's a half an hour warm-up at home before you leave. And then you take 5 minutes in your car before you walk in the building to kind of get reconnected. Sometimes clients will take an audio warm-up that I've given them, where they're taking 8 to 10 minutes to really connect to that intention, and then also to get their body, their breath, and their energy aligned with their most confident, most expressive self, and then go into the room.
Hmm. I love that. Do you find it for different situations and different people, it might be it might be a little more calming, like getting your head calm versus I know like when somebody's going out on a public stage, they'll maybe jump up and down on a mini trampoline or they like jump up in place like to really get their blood flowing and get their energy. Is it really situational?
I'm a fan of aliveness rather than thinking about calm or
Mm.
energy needing to be a certain way. Forgive me, I can't remember the name of the study. I know a colleague who always talks about a study where they had mathematicians, singers, and speakers broken down into two groups each.
Mhm.
One of the groups was told, try to calm down. And the other group was told to say in their mind, I'm so excited to finally take this math test.
Wow.
I'm so excited to sing this song for you. And in each of the three groups, the group that was saying, I'm so excited, rather than I need to calm down, scored better, including the math test. So that was not subjective.
Wow.
In the singing, subjectively, all the people who were in the excited group scored higher and they were more pitch perfect. So subjective and objective. And the speakers, totally 100% subjective, they scored better as well.
Wow.
Now, I like to think of it as getting grounded and expansive at the same time.
Mhm.
So whatever kind of energy you have, you're going to have that. I'm not going to ask you to try to be like Tony Robbins, jumping up and down and walking across fire for 10 days in a row until 3 o'clock in the morning. I want you to be you. And some movement, if we're nervous, tends to it gives all the stuff that our body's trying to do a place to go,
Hmm.
which helps it feel more like excitement. And whenever I'm warming people up, if it's really high stakes, there's almost always some movement we're going to do, some qigong, some random shaking, go for a run, go to a yoga class, followed by some stillness.
Hmm.
If people are going into a meeting and it doesn't feel incredibly high stakes, it might feel more like a meditation where there's not a whole lot of extra stuff that they need to move.
Right.
And so it is a bit situational, and it also depends on the person. Some
Mhm.
people are, I need to kickbox and then I can get grounded. Others, a nice slow flow yoga class. So there is breathing and movement, and it's a very different quality than kickboxing.
Right. Yeah, totally understand. It's so interesting how our brains work. Like when what you were saying about just that study and how we talk to ourselves, and it's like we just in a lot of cases we just need to know how our brain works and how to talk to ourselves, and we can make so many things happen. It's so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Even, I'm so excited versus I'm so nervous.
Yeah.
And sometimes I and my clients will use nerve sided or scare-sighted, because
Okay.
it's like there's a part of us on the inside that's resisting saying I'm excited, and there's a part of us that is excited. So blending the two words together, so that part that's like, no, I'm scared.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're scare-sighted right now. And let's go ahead and do it, feels authentic to that part of us that's really committed to, no, it feels scary.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. And I was also thinking, and I don't even mean to go down this road, but with dogs, I think I heard recently that dogs, they're just like have so much excitement built up in them or nervous energy. And like when their mom or dad comes home, one of the reasons they'll go get a toy and bring you a toy is it's like this release of that energy for them. Like it's really interesting.
Yeah, they're connected to their bodies, so they can just go give themselves what they need. They need to move, they grab the toy. And as humans, we've lost a little bit of that because we're, focusing on the mind and kind of living in the head. We
Hmm.
could probably benefit from coming home from work and saying, hey, body, what do you need? Oh, I need to do like a walk around the block and then go upstairs.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Now you talk about three different voices. What are those three voices? Could you talk about them or explain them?
The three different types that are on the
Yeah, the
homepage.
type. Yeah.
So on the website, I have three different types of speakers that are based on real clients. The Julianne is the most kind of wild, out there, eccentric, they tend to be a person who's happy to speak.
Mm.
They know that they've got some messages that they're like channeling from the cosmos to share with the world. And yet they can be so ungrounded, the way that they disconnect into all of that stuff, plus their nerves, is that we might be able to understand them when they start talking. And as they continue, like no two speeches will be the same until
Yeah.
they work with someone. And when I was kind of codifying what are the three main types that I work with, the branding person that I was working with said, you have this creative energy, and yet you are very grounded. So your role with this kind of client is to help them get grounded
Hmm.
and be able to land their message so that people can hear them.
Hmm.
And I remembered working with someone in a leadership group that I was a part of, and she loved the creativity. She didn't ever want to do it twice the same way. She didn't really want to pause and look at the audience. And I said, goodbye to your impact then, because we can't understand a word coming out of your mouth right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love you. I'm going to be blunt. You've completely lost us.
Yeah.
You're seeing some smiles and stuff because you're entertaining.
Hmm.
And what you want is more than entertainment. You want to convey these ideas and help transform the world by transforming this room. And you are not doing that right now.
Yeah.
Most of the time, the message is delivered more softly. That was kind of I've tried, you asked me for this, I'm going to give it to you.
Right.
The Tessa, in some ways, seems very different on the outside to people, more quiet, tend to be introverted. All of these, by the way, are empaths.
Hmm.
They can feel others' feelings. The Tessa tends to be more quiet, may have even been told, we can't hear you, you need to speak up,
Hmm.
speaks less often, and needs some coaxing to know how to speak and be heard and felt in a way that is authentic to them. So if I adjust my breathing and I expand my energy to fill a room, as a Tessa, I can become one of those people who says 5 words that turns the whole meeting, that
Hmm.
everyone listens to. And it's not about getting louder. It's about breathing in a way. One of my favorite clients, I was co-leading something next to her after having worked with her. And she said, people have been telling us to raise our volume in order to be heard. And then she pointed to her rib cage expanding and said, Lauri is asking us to increase our volume, and pointed to her torso in order to be heard.
Mm.
And there is a way that if we let the breath do the work and we're energetically hugging the whole room, it almost doesn't seem like we've gotten louder. And yet the person at the other end of the boardroom table or the back of the theater without a microphone says we're crystal clear.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Stephanie is on the outside, seems intense. The client that it was based on would not have a problem with me sharing this. When we started working together, people told her that she had resting bitch face.
Yeah.
And underneath all of that is that incredible sensitivity that an empath has, and a very potent energy that is being suppressed and held in, rather than same kind of thing as the Tessa, allow that energy to fill the whole entire room. When it sounds like people are telling you to suppress more, suppress less.
Mm.
The more tense you get, the worse resting bitch face seems. The more you try to hold back that energy, the tighter your face has to get.
Right. Yeah.
So there's some spiritual work of perhaps surrendering, being comfortable without controlling every single detail, so that you truly are more fluid when you're in a meeting, instead of resisting every single thing that everybody else is saying because it's not the way you would do it.
Mm.
There's a bit of that, trusting in yourself to let go of the control and then let the energy expand. And then there's a way of, there is an intense energy, and it gets converted from resting bitch face into leader, into charisma, into the whole room wants to hear what you have to say about your expertise.
Yeah. I'd love to expand on that, but I have a question about, so with all the examples, it seems like you're going to get feedback pretty obviously. With a Julianne, like, how do you know that you're a Julianne? Because I imagine like you're feeling like you're doing fine because you don't have a problem with talking, and you're getting your voice out there. But how do they usually find out that they are?
Yeah, that is a fabulous question. They might need to have someone in their inner circle that they're asking them to tell them the truth, because they can be so entertaining that people will tell them they loved it. I loved watching you. You looked so great up there.
Yeah.
So having someone who kind of says, hey, Emperor, you have no clothes on, it was engaging and it didn't land in the way you want it to. We can't understand you. The other way is to ask the audience, what was your favorite part? Or can you name the 3 learning points that I shared? I'm gonna move the bug out of the way. What was your favorite part? Can you name the 3 learning points that I shared? One clue for a Julianne is that they will not be able to remember. Oh, or they'll only be able to say one. And when they repeat it, it kind of sounds like they didn't absorb it. Like you made a point that you think is really clear, and they're like that game of telephone that we used to play as kids.
Yeah.
When it comes back around to you, it does not sound like what you were trying to convey. A third way just popped into my head. which is almost the way to help yourself out of it. If you notice that the audience looks like they only have one facial expression the whole time you're talking,
Yeah.
they're delighted by you, but they're not understanding you. And in that one, if you're actually listening to their nonverbal half of the conversation and looking for shifts and changes and light bulbs going off, as a Julianne, you're already connecting more with them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's how to diagnose, are you a Julianne? And it's how to get yourself out of it. If you realize, oh, they just sort of have looked like, but they're, you're not seeing the other shifts and changes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I guess just with any of these, I mean that there's definitely guidance here that especially when you're earlier in your career and you're figuring it out, and you should be asking for feedback. I mean, if there's somebody like that you trust that is in the meetings that you're in, and you can kind of go to them afterwards and kind of find out how you were perceived, like how your message was landing. It sounds like that's a good approach to take.
Yeah. And particularly someone that you really trust, and you might even give them some things to look for.
Mm-hmm.
When I do corporate engagements, I'll work with someone one-on-one, and they'll usually have a development team. And toward the end of the engagement, we'll have a group meeting with the development team there. So I can try to teach the development team how to phrase it in a way that is constructive.
Mm-hmm.
How to almost be my replacement when I'm gone. Because saying things like, you have resting bitch face again, if the individual is okay with that feedback and is like, I don't need you to sugarcoat it, I know what to do, you just give me the straight feedback in your words, that's great. If that phrase is triggering and is going to crush that person, we want to find a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's asking them to look for breath, to show them what people look like when they're not breathing and trying to speak, and what they look like when they are breathing. So your friend, colleague can watch and say, I'm not sure you were breathing in this presentation as much as Lauri might have said, or as much as you told me to look out for.
Mm-hmm. And that was going to be my next question with the, like when you when you have that resting bitch face, and we talk about being open in meetings, and are there any exercises that you have people kind of go through to get comfortable with that outside of meetings?
Get comfortable with
With being able to be more open during
Mhm.
meetings instead of trying to do it all in the meeting, and maybe losing sight of what's even happening because you're so focused on yourself.
Yeah. I often ask my clients to do like a 2 to 5 minute breathing warm up in the beginning of the day.
Okay.
And then as you're walking into the meeting, take a breath as you enter.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even take 3 conscious breaths while you're sitting there in the room, so that you've started the meeting off on the right foot with
Mm-hmm.
breathing, with openness, with fluidity, and then let it go from there. Other times, I'll ask them to actually pick a couple of meetings during the week and pay attention for the whole meeting. Our bodies are kind of funny when it comes to speaking. I'll use sports metaphors all the time. On one level, shifting these speaking habits, communication habits, leadership habits is the same thing as changing how I might shoot a 3-pointer in basketball, except I'm talking all the time. Mm-hmm. When I go to shoot a basketball, I've specifically grabbed the basketball and I've gone into the gym. So it can be really helpful to pick a couple of circumstances to consciously practice for the whole meeting or for 10 minutes of the meeting, as a way of kind of teaching the body, shoot the 3-pointer this other way, so that then eventually that becomes the new habit and you almost don't need to think about it anymore. you might take a breath and walk through the door and feel like you're your most vibrant, alive self, and that's all you need.
Mm-hmm. No, it makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. What Now, a lot of people are just completely scared to go into a room and be put on the spot. And I think that we kind of alluded to this earlier. If somebody is just so afraid to speak in front of people, do you work with clients like that? And what are some of the things that help them or that you help them with to get past that?
Yeah, the people that I tend to work with the most are sensitive visionaries, ambitious empaths, and loving rebels.
Mhm.
The vast majority of those have their own business, and yet some of them are the rebels from within the organization, or the sensitive beings who might not call themselves leaders yet, and yet they have things that they see that no one else is seeing, and they're wanting to contribute. Setting that intention ahead of time, where we would really excavate what are the gifts that you're bringing with your presence, with who you are,
Mhm.
that the room needs. And a lot of times it is that sensitivity in a corporate environment, the deep listening, the creating together. Because there's already enough people who believe they have the answers, who are talking really loud and taking up all the space in the room. Owning our gifts as humans, naming what they are, and like, why does this organization crave your voice?
Mhm.
Why are they telling you in your 360 feedback they want to hear from you more? Why have they asked you to join this meeting? Owning your gifts, turning up the volume on that tends to help us with, like, there's an episode of Seinfeld from years ago where Jerry Seinfeld said, most studies show that people are more afraid of public speaking than death.
Yeah.
That means when you go to a funeral, you'd rather be the person in the casket than the one giving the eulogy. Connecting to some kind of why. Why would I speak that's bigger than me and bigger than all those people in the room, for the organization or for the world, if your organization is up to work that you believe is going to help change the world?
Mhm.
That helps some of the fear.
Yeah.
Breathing really, really, really helps as well. It's like it turns us into the air conditioner for our own fear and the hormones and the chemicals that go with that. And if there's anxiety in the room and you're a sensitive, perhaps quiet person who's like, an antenna for everybody else's stuff in
Mhm.
the room, the breathing helps it convert into something useful.
Got it. Yeah, and it's interesting too. I mean, have spoken with women that have done TED Talks that are regularly engaged in public speaking, and they still feel nervous going into it. So it's not, so that's, I think a lot of people think like, oh, I'm nervous and I'm never going to get through it, and this is like me, but it's like that's a normal feeling.
Yes. Or I'm nervous and I'm not supposed to be. My hands are clammy and all of a sudden I'm hot
Yeah.
when I get up on stage. About 5 years into being in business, I realized that like every group I spoke in front of, every client I talked to was secretly thinking that there was something wrong with them
Hmm.
because they were experiencing those sensations.
Yeah.
And Laurence Olivier is considered by many to be the greatest actor who ever lived. And before he went on stage for the vast majority of his life, he supposedly threw up before he went on stage every single night.
Hmm.
All of that sensation is part of what makes us engaging and charismatic if we let it flow. And I believe speaking should feel more like a roller coaster ride than sitting on your couch eating popcorn and watching Netflix.
Yeah.
And it's about surrendering to the roller coaster ride so that there's as much ease and flow in that roller coaster ride And sometimes the first step of that is, like you said, saying, this is how it's supposed to feel.
Yeah.
This is the part of the roller coaster where it's going click, 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 and you're going up and you're getting more and more nerve-sided. And then whoo, you leap and it goes whoo, and that first drop is really something.
Mm-hmm.
And then in most cases, the rest of the roller coaster has twists and turns. And we've kind of settled into, hey, I'm on a roller coaster ride. There might be one big loop coming. And other than that, it's thrilling.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the same as Netflix.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so interesting too when you talk about that roller coaster ride. And I love that you use the term nerves. I can't say it, nerve sighted. um,
Yeah.
yeah. So like that roller coaster ride when, you might stumble on your words or like you stutter. It's so interesting. Like when that happens, it's so magnified in your brain. And often you talk to the audience or you look at the replay and you can't even tell that even happened.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels longer for you.
Mm-hmm.
And most of us keep trying to talk as we're stumbling. If you've ever played a sport and you try to run as you're stumbling, you might fall down versus if I'm stumbling, stop, get back up. In speaking, that means take a breath and then keep going. And when you inspire the air, the thoughts come rolling in and you can recover. And a good friend and singing instructor, friend of mine, says, every breath is a chance to begin again.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
it works
love
in
it.
singing, speaking, and life.
Yeah. No, definitely. That's definitely very metaphorical. So it's interesting when you say about taking that breath. So I notice like a lot of speakers, especially I think when you're coached, you're told to talk very slowly and more methodically, almost to a point where I personally have to speed it up by like 1.25 to 1.5 to actually be able to listen to it. Is
Mm-hmm.
that helpful? Are there different benefits to that? Because I can imagine like it leaves room for that breath and to be able to kind of think and process through. But do you talk about that?
I do. My reframe on speak slower is I'm going to bring in a music metaphor. In music, the space is as important as the notes.
Mm.
In visual arts, the white space is as important as the image. In fact, it reveals the image. And in speaking, the silences and the words work together to create the meaning.
Mm.
Now, in music, there are fast songs and slow songs. What makes them a song are the moments of rest. So if I just sit down at a piano and start hitting keys, it's not going to be a song because I've never played piano. What I would love for speakers is to learn how to have the moments of rest in your speaking.
Mhm.
And then you can go back to your own style. You might need to slow it down to get those breaths in there. And then as your body learns to breathe, you can go faster, you can go slower, depending on the emotional impact that you want to be having on the audience at that point.
Mhm.
If it's, if someone's in a boardroom meeting and they're sharing an idea that's a bit revolutionary for the group to consider, there might be some moments where you want to pause and let the room actually digest what you've said. Same thing with a TEDx or a TED style talk. TEDs are all about ideas worth spreading.
Mhm.
So if it's really not new and you're just talking and talking and talking and, hey, I've got this idea that can change the planet, here it is, yada, 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 yada. People didn't get it, particularly if it was new.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm talking, talking, talking. I have a fast style. I'm really excited. I have this idea that'll change the planet. Here it is. And now I'm going to go back to my fast pace. We as the audience have a moment to digest that. So rather than thinking slow, think punctuate with moments of silence.
Mm. That's great advice. I love that. I personally need to be a little more intentional with my my speaking and when I do engagements or when I'm on a panel. It's interesting when you do it after a while, you just do it and you don't put a whole lot of thought into it. Like even if
Hmm.
you think you're fine and you get through it, there's just so much improvement that you could make just
Yeah.
by being thoughtful. Because that, I mean, even your example there, I just felt like, oh, that's so impactful, even though it was very short and you know,
Yeah. Thank
love it.
you.
Hmm. Um, I know you gave one example. Do you have another example of somebody that you've worked with where it's been transformative to their leadership style, like whether they're an entrepreneur or in corporate, it doesn't matter. I mean, I'd love to hear another example if you have one.
Yeah. I'd love to give one of my favorites. It was actually a man, and I will
Mhm.
say it was a very introverted, intuitive, quiet man. So getting the same feedback that a lot of women out there get.
Yeah.
The engagement was, this person is never, like, the organization wants this person to be promoted because of everything else that they're doing, and their executive presence, aka leadership presence, and communication style doesn't cut it in this organization.
Hmm.
So I start out with a verbal 360. And while I'm talking to this person's boss, the boss says, frankly, I don't think he has it in him. And when you're doing a verbal 360, you don't stop and like get on your high horse and have a hold of, you just ask the questions.
Hmm.
And what I wanted to say was, you're, with all due respect, I'm the expert here and you're dead wrong. This person had a more quiet presence, not the highly extroverted type A personality who's talking all the time in every meeting. And I knew that by setting intentions and breathing to carry the voice and energetically holding the room with his more still energy, he could be in this place that's not meek, and it's also not aggressive. It's this assertive sweet spot in the middle. And I did one of those group meetings that I talked about with the boss
Hmm.
and like a level above and a peer and the HR representative all in the room. And I was coaching him live. So he's running a real meeting and I'm going pause. So I would just pause the whole meeting and say, inhale and say that again. Pause, expand your energy to the edges of the room. So he's transforming very courageously right before their eyes.
Wow.
And when I'm just about to say, okay, I'm done here, just continue the meeting now and we'll talk after, I paused one more time and I asked the other people, hold your fingers behind your back at first. On a scale of 1 to 10, what score, 10 being he's got it, would you have given his executive presence 6 months ago before we met? Okay, go ahead and reveal it. Everybody's holding 1s, 2s, and 3s.
Hmm.
Hands behind your back, what score would you give now? All 7, 8s, and 9s. And they looked at me like I was an alien. They really did. It's an organization that loves innovation. So
Yeah.
it was part like, what is happening? It's like she's a magician. What is going on? Like, how is this happening? He's not doing it like me, yet he has the room. And I'm
Hmm.
like, that's why I would have said, with all due respect, you're dead wrong, because I know every human has their own version of charisma,
Hmm.
of presence. And this route of intentions and breath and aligning your body and energy is how you get there. Not by, let me try to do it like my boss.
Hmm.
Let me try to do it like Tony Robbins. Not even let me try to do it like Barack Obama.
Hmm.
Like, he's more still. You might be more still. It's still not about you mimicking Barack Obama. It's about you being you.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons this is my favorite story is that he did get that promotion on the
Oh,
very next
amazing.
round, right after that engagement.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Well, thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that. And that's And I appreciate you saying that not everybody has to be a Tony Robbins, not everybody has to be a Barack Obama. Like, because I think that's what happens is that, everybody holds themselves to a certain standard and then they don't work on their own strengths that could make them a a a, a better speaker,
Yeah.
I think, because it's so true that I mean, I accepted that a long time ago that I am more of the calm presence and I can express my voice, but I am never going to be the Tony Robbins that goes out and like yells at people. And so the earlier I think in your career that you accept that and you really work with what your gifts are, I think the better
Yeah.
off you are.
Yeah. And you absolutely, the more you learn to own your
Hmm.
style, your way, trust it, and then expand from there, the better it's going to go.
Yeah.
And if there are people out there watching this later or listening to it who have any doubts, if you look throughout history, like Tony Robbins and Barack Obama are very, very different.
Yeah.
And at some point, each of them has been considered the best public speaker, and people have been trying to mimic them.
Hmm.
So it's not about mimicking what's popular right now. It's noticing, hey, Tony Robbins and Barack Obama were both considered great speakers, and they're really different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So true. So true. And I have so much I really want to talk to you about, but I know I want to get into some questions because I know we're getting towards the end. Some questions that I ask everybody in my audience or everybody in all of my guests. Sorry.
Mhm.
Do you have a mentor or have you had a mentor that you can look back on has kind of changed your or impacted your career in a positive way?
I have had many, and the one that popped into my head is my favorite acting instructor ever, who I reference a lot, and he's been on my mind a lot this year. Um, because when I really started listening to my intuition, I shifted some things in my business to really go toward what I believe works for people.
Hmm.
And I created the Speakers Studio, a sacred space for sensitive visionaries, ambitious empaths, and loving rebels to speak in small, intimate groups so that their bodies can know that they are safe
Hmm.
and can find their more grounded, expansive, authentic self in that safe group and then take it out in the world. And when I worked with Richard Side, my mentor and teacher, it was in the Sideways acting studio.
Hmm.
And it was deep. It was deep work where he knew just about everything about me and held the space with love and helped us all grow. And this year I found myself going, you know what? I have some very similar gifts. I know how to go deep. I know this intimate group thing is really magical. So he's
Hmm.
been on my mind a lot this year.
Hmm. I love that. And I have so many questions from that. But well, I do want to ask you, and I wanted to ask you this earlier. So as an actress and a somebody who coaches on public speaking, do you feel like there's value in engaging in some kind of theater, improv, if you want to be comfortable speaking?
Yeah, I don't really think there's a need to take an actual acting class.
Hmm.
I do think like voice, breath work, that kind of stuff is great. And improv, if you're looking to kind of take a risk that is even bigger than a speaking risk, improv is one. Like, I don't think you need to learn how to act,
Yeah,
but improvising is essentially what you're doing in a meeting if
right.
you're answering questions. And speaking, even a formal speech to me is, unless you have a teleprompter, it's more like a structured improv than a full play.
Hmm.
So improv is really helpful for knowing that you cannot know. You cannot know what's coming next. You cannot
Yes.
know what question you're going to get next. And you will know the answer. You will know what to do. If you can do it when you're improvising and being funny at the same time, it kind of teaches your system, I can do a Q&A. I can be on a panel, and I don't need to try to guess every single question they will ask me.
Mm-hmm.
I know my stuff. I know something about the group that's going to be there. I'm ready to go.
Mm. Yeah. I've personally been looking at improv myself. I'm excited to do that. It's just making the space and finding the time, especially when it's an in-person. Yeah. Anyway, so don't mean to go off on that. Thank you for sharing that. So we talked a little bit about breathing and exercises. Is there a routine or a ritual that you have daily in the morning, evenings that you attribute your well-being to and that you feel you need to do to stay balanced?
I try. I've had a little period where I fell off the wagon a little bit. I try to meditate every single day and do some of my own sound breathing stuff at the tail end of the meditation. And I do some kind of yoga and or stretching every single morning. So this morning I didn't do a full yoga class, but I woke up and I stretched a bit. And as I was doing it, I caught myself thinking, it's like I'm getting the house in order for my soul to do what it needs to do for the rest of the day, instead of neglecting my body. Both the meditation and the stretching or yoga is giving space for me to be inspired and be at my best.
Yeah, love it. Love it. And when you need an energy boost or confidence boost, is there a go-to song that you have that you'll listen to?
Oh, okay. One popped into my head. It's a song from from the album Passion, The Last Temptation of Christ.
Okay.
It's a song that I used when I was like 21 years old, playing a certain role. It's all musical and it's very, very energetic. So it's not one that people are going to recognize, but it is one that, like, if I needed energy and I play that, I think it probably even comes with the memory of that role, which no one ever thought I was going to get. And then I did.
Oh, so how special, more and even more meaning to you.
Yeah.
Love it, love it. Is there something that you've bought in the last year, $100, under $100, that has made an impact on your life?
Can I share a gift rather than?
Yes, yes, of course.
I got married in 2022. We went to our
Oh,
honeymoon in Paris.
congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. And we went for a honeymoon in Paris later that year, and I just was giddy every morning with the Nespresso machine. You put a little pod in, they're recyclable. And my husband noticed how giddy I was, so he bought me one for Christmas last year. So I've had it almost a year now. I'm spending less money because I've discovered it's really espresso that I like. Coffee is okay. And sometimes the first cup in the morning is a good old fashioned black cup of coffee. And it stopped me from going out as much. So it saved me a little money. And it feels like I've made it kind of a moment of like, treat yourself like you've made it. Have this thing that's a luxury or feels like it's a luxury pretty much anytime I want it at a lower price.
Yeah, that's so true. I was just at Starbucks this morning, and the person in front of me ordered one coffee, and it was eight something, like for one coffee.
Yeah. Yeah. They used to be like 2 or 3, and now they're 7, 8 each time. So
Yeah.
I also tend to reserve those for when I'm really treating myself or going out with someone where it's like, this is our office space. We're gathering together now that we can do that. Pandemic's over. We can meet in person.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wonder if you go to like a 7-Eleven, if you can still get cup of coffee under $1 that
I don't
exist.
know. I was just on the East Coast and we went into a Dunkin' Donuts and got a bunch of things for like less than $12. There were four of us there. Most of us got coffees or a Diet Coke or a donut or something. And it was all under $12.
Oh, there you go. Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah, we don't have that as much on the West Coast, but
Oh, yeah, I kind of take that for granted. I end up being here on the East Coast more often than not. Just the last question, is there a book or a podcast that you've listened to or read recently that you'd recommend to the audience?
I read a book, I think it was probably about 2 years ago. It's called, I'm going to look down and find it so I can answer you. It's called The Soul Sourced Entrepreneur. I think there's something great, even if you're not an entrepreneur. There's a unique blend of talking about having like soul and inspiration and strategy in everything you do that I think people who aren't entrepreneurs, people who are engaged in business, understanding that both soul and strategy working together is a great combination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's the theme I really have noticed and appreciate about your approach is that you're very like soul oriented in everything you do. And I think that's so important because when we're trying to change behavior, which is, what we're talking about, you have to start from within, and that has to be the starting point. So
Yeah.
I really admire, appreciate your approach. So you're now part of our audience's Hype Squad. Do you have any last words of wisdom, advice, insights that you would share before we end the conversation?
I think the main thing that I would want people to know is your voice matters. And yes, I'm speaking to you too. We really do need to hear from people out there who don't know that their voice matters, aren't sure that their voice matters. One of my metaphors for humanity is that it's almost like we are one giant orchestra, and the drums are playing more than they need to because a lot of the string section has gone silent.
Mm-hmm.
And only the drums can be the drums, and only the string section can be the string section. And when they all play full out and together, that's when global harmony will be reached.
Those are, wow, that's like great. Great way to end this conversation. Thank you. If our audience wants to connect with you or reach out to you, what's the place to do that? And where can they reach you?
Yeah, the best place to reach me is to go to my website. And then if you're into the socials, scroll down to the bottom and they're at the bottom of every page.
Great.
The website is voice-matters.com. And part of that is because that's the easiest one for me to remember, whereas all of my social handles are a lot longer.
Okay, perfect. Great. Well, thank you so much, Lauri. I appreciate your time. I appreciate everything that you've shared. There's so much valuable information that people can really use and take action on. I hope that they do. And so thank you for sharing your voice here with us.
Thank you so much for having me and for having your podcast and bringing your voice to the people who need you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lauri. Bye.